Hello, my name is Richie Scholl from Worthington Distribution. Today I'd like to take you through a quick case study on a hospitality IP phone system installation that we were involved with a dealer in a resort in upstate New York. So in the main resort on the main property, there's an office, 54 guest lodges, a restaurant, a pool house, a hot tub, game room, conference center. There's no wiring between the lodges. And there is internet and Wi-Fi in each lodge, and they're all individual. So each lodge, each guest unit has its own modem and Wi-Fi router. Separate from this property is another small property with 5 rental homes, also each with their own individual modem and Wi-Fi. So the requirements and the goals of the project overall, they were looking to replace an aging telephone system. So we also wanted to help reduce downtime, reduce service calls, reduce the telephone bill for certain, which did happen, but to provide 911 and local calling from each individual lodge. That really became the main focus of the phone from a guest perspective, was to provide that emergency calling should the need arise. And then to go back and unify some what were previously separate systems, like the lodge, where the guests stay, the office, the restaurant, the separate houses, to bring those things that were kind of on different systems all together into one to make it easier and more convenient for the office staff to communicate between properties and to facilitate relations with the guests from all those different facilities. They also wanted to equip key personnel and certain management folks with wireless system phones, and then give the customer an opportunity to rethink how they use the phone system. Maybe use some direct numbers, different groups, mobile phones for management personnel to talk, and then also to bring multiple companies together into one location from a phone answering standpoint. As far as the hardware that was used, this is the majority of what was there. It was the UCM 6308A. There were a couple of the WP835 wireless phones. These are the Wi-Fi wireless phones that are able to roam all over the site. There were 7 of the GXP 2135, the smaller system phone, 9 of the 2170, which is the larger system phone. In a bit we'll go over where they were used and why there were different ones. And then 80 of the 631W, what we call the guest phones. This is a relatively new series of phone to Grandstream, and in that GHP series, that's the hospitality phone they call it, there are some smaller and really cheap options that don't have a screen at all. There's a reason that we chose the one with the customer with the screen, and we'll get into that in a few slides. Here's the really important part, is the layout of the system, how it works, and why the Grandstream online tools became really important to really allow this system to be done relatively easily and affordably. So we have the internet at the top. When you think of the standard Grandstream phone system that you may go out there and pitch to a customer and install and configure, typically what we see is a commercial environment. So it's an office with a handful of phones, maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 phones, and those phones are, when we can, we like to have them on a PoE switch right behind that Grandstream UCM system, and that lets the Grandstream manage those phones locally. We're not relying on the internet. We have a really good solid network connection, and they're very reliable. In this case, the phones come in over the internet, so we're going to have that no matter what. But from an endpoint standpoint, as far as the phones themselves are concerned, when we can, we like to have them connected right behind the UCM. So that's where you see on the office. But keep in mind, in this system, the office is 9 phones out of 100 phones, and that's all that's behind the UCM. We're physically right behind the system in this case. As we move to the right on the pictures here, down at the restaurant, there is no wiring between the office and the restaurant that would facilitate having those phones directly behind the Grandstream on a PoE switch. So they are on a PoE switch, but they connect back to the UCM over GDMS, which is the Grandstream device management system. We'll talk more about that in a bit and give you a demo on how exactly that works. Those phones are connected through the internet, and that's how they go back and see that Grandstream system. Moving to the right a little further, in each individual lodge, again, there are 54 lodges. 12 of them have 2 different, like an A and a B side, so there's actually 2 phones in those. And there we have existing in each lodge a modem and a Wi-Fi router. In that case, the 631 phone is used over Wi-Fi to that Wi-Fi router in the lodge, and then over internet up to Grandstream from there. And then finally, the staff wireless phones really kind of work very much the same as the lodge phones. The difference is the staff wireless phones are paired to the site-wide staff network, and that lets them roam around, not just be paired to one unit. The main point that we're trying to drive home here is, of 100 phones, only 9 of them are connected directly to the system. The rest go through the internet. Back on the guest phone really quick, this is really what we call this always-on passive marketing. And in this particular installation for this customer, I think it was a really big part of the reason that they went with it. they kind of came back and said, okay, we know we need to replace this old aging phone system. We know guests are not making phone calls all the time from their lodge, but we do need to give them a way to contact 911. We want them to be able to contact our restaurant, our front desk, obviously, but how do we get more out of it? Well, with these phones, these are actually less expensive than your typical office phone, even a smaller version of an office phone. So they make sense. They're the right phone for this application. They don't have all the extra, one-touch buttons with LEDs. They're really straightforward. But they give you this large display that you can do a lot with. So in this case, we've got a home screen called the wallpaper that we can now put a custom image on. Again, it just kind of enhances that experience. It makes it look like it belongs there and wasn't just stuck there because they needed a phone. And that is kind of a always on, just a nicer image that's on the background. Where it gets really cool is this photo on the right, and you may see it passing by on our phone here right now, is a screensaver option. So after 3 minutes of inactivity, so if the phone's not touched for 3 minutes, it bounces into screensaver, and then staff on property have the ability to create these JPEG images, and then the phone every 30 seconds will switch through to a new image. In this case, what the property ended up doing is using it to say, here are some of our specials at the restaurant this week, here's some meals you can expect to find at the restaurant, here's some of the amenities on site that you can use, go to the beach, borrow a canoe or a kayak, go to the store and pick up some essentials. All the things that are on property are scrolling through here. And it's just kind of an always-on marketing tool that's passive but kind of gets your attention when you walk into the guest lodges because they're changing and they sort of get your attention. So that's sort of the end part of that. Obviously, much more to talk about within GDMS, within Grandstream. This is not meant to be really a training, but more just a kind of an overview or a kind of a look at a really neat application. So again, we normally see these kind of entry-level, so many extensions in more of a commercial environment. This was a really neat one because it was kind of outside the norm. Pretty big system, pretty different application in terms of the way all the different phones connect to the system, but one that Grandstream handles really, really well, and the flexibility they give us made it really pretty easy. So this is kind of meant to give you an overview of how that works. Any questions, give us a call, drop us an email. We'd be happy to kind of walk through your application with you. And there are many others that we're not talking about that this would also be a really good fit for, from small entry-level systems, commercial, residential, now hospitality. It's all in there. So any questions, please feel free to give us a shout, and we'll help you on your application. Thanks.